The Cincinnati Reds did not listen to me when, as recently as yesterday, I said that they needed to move Tyler Stephenson from behind the plate. And now, catcher number one is out 4 to 6 weeks with a broken thumb. Could that mean that we will see the return of Kyle Farmer behind the plate? Maybe. Also, the Reds bullpen continues to be very, very bad, and there's lots of help sitting at AAA Louisville to help bolster the Reds roster so they can score more runs to help overcome the bullpen deficiency. Also, Reds are heading to the evil empire that is Cardinals country. We're going to break that down for you. We've got all that and more on today's Locked On Reds. Let's go.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Reds. Thanks so much for making Locked On Reds your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Stephen Offenbaker. Jeff Carr is out on vacation, believe it or not. But have no fear, because here at the Locked On Podcast Network, we've got you covered with your team every day. Again, I'm your host, Stephen Offenbaker. I have a passion for the Cincinnati Reds. I have a passion for baseball, and I have turned that passion into information for you. On today's podcast, we are going to talk about the awful injury that Tyler Stephenson suffered today with breaking his thumb. He's going to be out 4 to 6 weeks. We're going to talk about what the Reds might exactly do about filling his shoes in that time period. We're going to talk about this bullpen. We're going to talk about players that could be brought up from AAA to help this team right now. And we're going to talk about the road trip getting ready to start in St. Louis. But have no fear. I know you may be worried right now. What are we going to do without Jeff Carr and his eternal optimism? How are we going to fill that void? Don't worry. I have brought in a very special guest co-host for you today. Let's welcome him in. The one and only Nick Kirby from Late Night Reds Talk is going to sit in the co-host chair today. Nick, how are you?
What is up, Steve? Thanks for having me on.
Hey, listen, I wanted to have somebody famous on here that's getting lots of TV time. And after your recent celebrity appearance on Bally Sports Ohio while you were out in Boston, I just couldn't resist the opportunity to bring you in.
Yeah, better get me while I'm hot.
Exactly. Why you're still cheap and affordable, right?
Yeah.
Well, listen, Nick, let's dive right into this, because I've been saying for weeks now, basically ever since Tyler Stephenson got that concussion at home plate, that the Reds really needed to start developing a strategy for getting him moved from behind the plate more often than not. And I know there's complications. Joey Votto is still on this team, and he is still the first baseman of this team. So that limits the opportunities for Tyler Stephenson to play first base. But there's a lot of DH opportunities that could be had. There are ways to protect Tyler Stephenson. I've been calling for that. Not everybody agrees with me. If you read my Twitter mentions today, there are a lot of people that didn't agree with me as I was talking about this. So let's just start there. What are your thoughts as far as moving Tyler Stephenson to a new position?
Well, I differ from you. I couldn't be more against it. I understand like everyone's perspective. Tyler Stephenson is as exciting of a player as there is, right? I mean, it's going to really stink not to have him for 4 to 6 weeks. But I think Tyler Stephenson is an elite hitting catcher. I think he is a slightly above average first baseman or DH, maybe even less as DH. Let me explain real quick and try not to make it too nerdy for you. So Tyler Stephenson, since the start of last season, has a 117 weighted runs created plus. Okay. That's the 4th best among catchers. If he was a first baseman, that's the 16th best. The average weighted runs created plus for a first baseman this year is 112. So it's just, if it gets to a point where you have to move him, where there's no alternative, then yeah, I mean, absolutely you have to move him. It is what it is. But there's so much more value out of him as a catcher. And if you're able to have him stick there, it makes every other piece of the roster construction, I think, so much easier for the Reds, as they're going to have a lot of difficult decisions here coming up in 2023, 2024 as they try to right the ship.
Jeff and I talked about that yesterday. We took a look at the core of 2024. And one of the things, as you look up and down through this Red system, is that there's not an heir apparent at first base. That's the first part of that. The second part of it is How valuable is Tyler Stephenson for the next 4 to 6 weeks? How much, runs created plus is he adding sitting on the injured list? I know that's being a little bit facetious. That's not a fair question. But what my concern is are these freak injuries? Probably. He didn't have his hand tucked. He caught a foul ball. What are the odds? But with the multiple concussions, with now a broken thumb, with more missed time, as these injuries continue to build, how long will it hold true that he is an above average producing catcher if he's beat up all the time versus moving him to another position and then allowing him to be in the lineup 150 games a year?
Yeah, I mean, I think you got to be creative. I don't think you should have Tyler Stevenson catching 130, 140 games by any means. I think you could even have the guy catching 90 to 100 games and maybe, mixing and matching other places. I think platooning him with Joey Votto would make a lot of sense. And then having your backup catcher play those days. And that'll really, I mean, how many times the Reds going to see left-handed pitchers throughout the year? 40, 30, 40 times. Well, there's 40 games right there. And you're not really weakening the team. So I think there's creative ways to do it. It'd be a last resort for me because every other piece is so much more difficult. But if the doctors are saying this needs to happen, if even Tyler Stevenson himself wants this to happen, it's a totally different story for me. But I have a hard time believing Tyler Stevenson got 300 something games in the minors. He knows how much more catchers get paid than first basemen. I have a hard time believing he's just like, oh yeah, move me. I think he's probably going to push back on that too. So I think you have to kind of weigh all of that stuff in. But again, I understand what you're saying. I understand the other side of this. I love Tyler Stephenson. I want him in the lineup. But I also want the Reds to be really good. And I think they have a higher ceiling with Tyler Stephenson at catcher.
It's interesting. One of the things I did say in an exchange on Twitter, I was talking with our friend Ashley Davis, who I think you ran into while you were out in Boston on this trip. She was posting from out there as well. What I said was until Joey Votto is gone, basically kind of what you just said. Some creativity is involved. Should you still let Stevenson catch some? Probably, maybe. But I think there is a middle ground right now to maybe limit some of his exposure and in the ways that you're saying, the days that Joey's off at first base, the days that Joey's DHing, maybe you do move Tyler Stephenson down. I think there's some things to be done. I think the Reds should at least start taking a look at ways to get Stevenson in the lineup with the idea that you want him in the lineup in some way, shape, or form 140 to 150 times throughout a season. We did see just a few minutes before we started recording this episode that the Reds have made a decision on who the replacement for Tyler Stevenson is going to be, and that is coming from AAA Louisville. That's catcher by the name of Oki, if I'm saying that correctly. Oki, okay. What's his name, Nick?
I think it's Chris Oki, second round draft pick, while back. Yeah, I was kind of surprised with that news. I thought they would just go with one of the guys they've had up. I think they still have Sandy Leone in the system too, who has that experience. It seems like to me they're going with the guy that has maybe a little bit more upside, maybe a little bit more risk of just completely not producing at all. But it does at least seem like they are going with the guy. Hey, we got a chance here. Let's see what this guy has, as opposed to just going with a filler option. So I guess in that perspective, I kind of like it. I imagine he'll probably get a decent amount of playing time. I don't think the Reds need to see Aramis Garcia see what he's got all that much. I think they, I imagine it'd probably be closer to maybe like a 60-40 split, something like that, with Garcia getting more.
I did see that Oki of the catchers right now is hitting the best. Is having the best season. And he also recently hit for the cycle. I don't know if you knew that or not, but sometime last week he hit for the cycle. So, hey, why not go with the hot hand? I don't have much of a problem with it, but it is a tremendous loss having Tyler Stephenson out of this lineup. It's a different team with him out of the lineup. When we come back in the next segment, we're going to have to take a quick look at this bullpen and their continued struggles, but also a look around AAA Louisville to make a determination of who is ready to come up and help this Reds team right now. The fact of the matter is there's some players on this Reds major league roster right now that are going to be looking for a job. And I hope that they have their resume posted on LinkedIn. And if you're out there looking for an employee, you should head to LinkedIn right now, because as the sun comes out and small businesses are back in business, LinkedIn Jobs makes it easier for you to grow your team. LinkedIn Jobs help you find the people you want to interview faster and for free. You just jump onto the site. You can create a free job post within minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach your network and beyond to the world's largest professional network of over 810 million people. Then you just add your job and throw the purple #hiring frame on it, and the LinkedIn profile will spread the word that you're hiring so that your network can help you find the right people to hire. They have simple tools like screening questions to make it easy to focus on the candidates with just the right skills and experience, so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Did you know that every week, nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonmlb. That's linkedin.com/lockedonmlb to post your job for free today. Terms and conditions may apply. All right. In the first segment, we talked a little bit about the disastrous news that Tyler Stephenson is going to be out 4 to 6 weeks, and we're going to bring back in our special guest co-host here, Nick Kirby, visiting us from the Late Night Reds Talk podcast and live streaming show on YouTube. And he is helping to lend the optimism to what we are trying to bring today. And I don't always do a good job of that, Nick. I'm really down on this bullpen right now. I think there's some guys that definitely need to get sharp quick or in danger of losing their job. I could not be more disappointed with how Tony Santillan looked today. So I'm looking to you right now. Tell me why I should be optimistic about this Reds bullpen and the guys they've got out there right now.
Alexis Diaz. Man, he looks great.
Okay. There's one. That's true.
Yeah, I mean, everyone else just feels like kind of a coin flip. I mean, there've been some nice moments from Jeff Hoffman, some nice moments from Ross Detweiler, but can you really, count on these guys? Sessa struggled. Santillan, he was looking really good for a while, and then, he's just been up and down. Warren's really struggled. Kudos look pretty good. It just not a lot of sure things or even close to it right now. I mean, Lucas Sims makes this bullpen look a lot better. I know Dari Moreta really struggled in his first go around this year. Really got beat up at the end, had to go down. That was just, I mean, it was pretty obvious. But he, from the numbers I've seen, he looks pretty good at Louisville. Maybe he's worth another shot. As the season goes on, I mean, I think, some of these guys that are starters, you might see some of them kind of get moved. Some of the guys we're seeing down at AAA. When Nick Lodolo comes back, do they move? I know you had mentioned Mike Minor. I think he'd be a quality lefty out of the bullpen, at least a guy that is going to be able to throw strikes, right? I mean, so I mean, there's some ways to do it, but it's it feels like with the bullpen, just about almost all the guys that we were hoping could take that step that had that upside just haven't really materialized so far. But it's June. Remember last June, we were really, really down in this bullpen. I know they added some pieces, but there was a lot of guys that really flipped their seasons around and finished the season strong. So I guess that's kind of, you just have to hope, the Warrens and the Santillans can kind of figure that out.
I talked with Jeff yesterday about my thoughts on Mike Minor, and I really do think he could be a valuable piece the rest of this season in that bullpen. Looking at some of the moves that the Reds are going to have to make here relatively quickly, they're going to lose a pitcher based on the MLB roster rules. Then hopefully Nick Lodolo is returning soon. They're going to have to make a decision in the starting rotation. So for me, that's at least 2 spots right now. 2 people you've got to eliminate from the bullpen as it stands right now. One to make room for Mike Minor and one to conform with the roster reduction. Who are the first 2 guys you're sending out of there? Who goes?
Well, right now, probably, I mean, maybe Warren does have an option. I mean, that's a big thing that you have to factor. You just can't be cutting guys left and right and surviving a season. So he's probably the guy. And then I don't know, probably like a guy like Kunal's kind of a guy that's up and down just because he's the other one other than Alexis Diaz and Tony Santion. That's the only other ones that have options. And I don't think Diaz or Santion are worthy of a demotion. Well, Diaz definitely isn't, but I don't think Santion, even with the struggles, is worthy of a demotion at this point. I mean, he has had some good games. So yeah, I mean, it's just it's kind of that. But as we always see, these things tend to solve themselves.
They work themselves out, don't they?
Someone gets hurt. Who's going to replace Nick Lodolo? Sadly, one of the starters will probably get hurt, and it'll be a mute point, right? I mean, that's how baseball is today. It's just there's a lot of injuries.
Have you run out of room yet on your graphic that you put all of the Reds that get injured, your all injury team? Is it full? Like, can you even see the baseball field anymore?
Well, at least recently it's been some of the same characters again. So it has been new people to add on. So it's held steady.
So in the last segment, we talked about the injury to Tyler Stephenson and that the Reds are bringing up a replacement. There are a lot of guys in Louisville right now that are either major league capable or they're down there on rehab assignments. And it's about time for the Reds to make some difficult decisions. And I wanted to get your thoughts on just exactly how they might go about getting these guys back on the active roster. So I want to start with one of your ideas just first, right out of the gate. Rather than bringing up a backup catcher to fill that spot for Tyler Stephenson, you sent an interesting tweet today. For the YouTube viewers, I'm bringing it up on the screen now. For the audio folks, this is a tweet that Kirby sent out earlier with a picture of Kyle Farmer in full catcher's gear with a simple caption, "It's time." Could we see the return of Kyle Farmer to the backstop position in order to help the Reds get some more help into this lineup without having to bring up a minor league catcher that may not be ready?
Well, this would be a lot of fun. This was more of a joke. I don't really.
Oh no, come on, Kirby! You've got to own it. You can't play it off now. It's out there for the world to see.
If the Reds really thought Kyle Farmer could catch, then yeah, I mean that would solve a lot of issues. I don't think the Reds felt Kyle Farmer was a everyday catcher, or I think he would have probably got a more of a run there. I don't think they felt he had the skill set or whatever you need, but it was just a fun idea.
Of course, those that follow you too know that you are the president of the Kyle Farmer fan club, and that's why I chose to throw this in today, because I really wanted to mess with you a little bit, because I knew you were having fun with it. But it's not an uninteresting possibility. I mean, it does at least create some lineup flexibility for David Bell, not having to bring up a guy that you're going to have to put in the 8-9 hole in a minor league catcher that may not be able to handle major league pitching.
Yeah, I would love for him to at least, have the, kind of stay up to speed, to be kind of like a third catcher to kind of give you more flexibility. Like if you did want to DH Tyler Stephenson, because we saw you really don't want to DH Tyler Stephenson. You want him to play first base and Votto to DH just in case you get a catcher injury, so you're not losing your designated hitter. So yeah, I mean, I think that'd be a nice thing for Kyle Farmer to have. From what I've heard, I obviously don't understand the dynamic of pitching and catching. It's pretty hard to just have that as a casual position. It's something you have to invest quite a bit in. They're in, the catchers and pitchers are in all those meetings together. So it'd be difficult. It would take a lot away from a guy like Kyle Farmer's ability to stay fresh defensively at shortstop. So it'd be pretty difficult to do both from what I understand, from what I hear.
I mean, come on, look at this guy. Look at this guy, Nick. Nobody's running on him. Look at that picture.
I want it. It would be fun. Hey, it would break up the monotony of the season a little bit for sure.
Well, but let's talk about some of these guys that we know are going to be coming up. Donovan Solano, his rehab time is almost up. Jose Barrero has already been transferred from his rehab assignment to being outright assigned to Louisville to gain more spring training time, quote unquote, as the Reds have said. Max Strock has been discussed as recently as yesterday by David Bell as being a candidate to come up during the upcoming St. Louis series and play some outfield. So the question to you is, how are they going to make room on this roster for all these guys? What do you anticipate them being able to do as far as sending guys out to make room for these major league players to come up?
Well, the first two guys I would assume probably go are Friedel and Lopez. Again, it's the option game. Colin Moran also has an option. So I always look at who has options first, because I think that's always the Reds' priority, is they don't want to lose guys in their system. And that's not just a Reds thing. I think that's most teams are that way. Schrock probably more than any of those players helps this team, just because Joey Votto is the only good left-handed bat the Reds have. That's insane. After last year, it was Reds had way too many lefties. They couldn't hit left-handed pitching. Now they only have one legit left-handed major league bat in their lineup. What a contrast of years and how things have played out. So Schrock, get him up as soon as you can. Solano will help. I mean, he can play multiple positions. Barrero, I definitely want Barrero to hit the ground running. He's been about an average player at AAA. I want to see him crushing the ball at AAA when he's called up. I think I think everyone wants Barrero up. I want Barrero up. I can't wait to see what this kid has. But you want him to gain some confidence at the big league level. I think the last thing you want is to call him up and he struggle again, because he's been up. That would be his third time up and his third time struggle. You want him to build some confidence. So I don't think they can rush that. I think they got to be patient with that. And then they also have to factor in, I think the Reds are going to try to trade Kyle Farmer at the deadline. I think Kyle Farmer is going to become too expensive. Kyle Farmer is going to probably be a $5-6 million player next year. He's like $3 million this year, but he's going to get a raise, especially if he keeps hitting like this. I mean, he has like a 100 weighted runs created plus over the last 2 years now. So it's not like, hey, Kyle Farmer only hit for 1 month. He's been an average big league shortstop for a year and a half now. And that pays. that's, when you're in those final years of arbitration, that pays. So they can't just say, oh, we're just going to sit Kyle Farmer on the bench and trade him at the deadline. It doesn't really work that way. You have to play guys to have any sort of trade value. So there's a lot of moving pieces with this and a lot of decisions that are not just going to be strictly based on that day on the field. There's a lot of, Donovan Solano could be a guy you're trying to move at the deadline. Donovan Solano probably doesn't do much for this team. He's on a 1-year deal. If he comes up and rakes for 6 weeks, is someone going to give up their 25th best prospect for him? I don't know. Maybe. So there's a lot of weird factors. I think you're going to see a very different team in August versus July.
It's interesting that you talk about the options game, because one of the things to consider are these trades. And I hadn't even really given any thought to them moving Kyle Farmer at the deadline. Another move I think the Reds will make when Jonathan India is ready is sending Alejo Lopez back down to AAA just to kind of hold him in reserve. So, basically with the names you just mentioned, plus that, they can get all of the guys coming up from Louisville back on the roster without actually designating anybody for assignment. They can just straight send down all of the players, which I think, to your point, keeps enough people in the system that they can make the trades for prospects and still at least have some people with major league experience to field a team the second half of the season.
Yeah, like a guy like Matt Reynolds has no options left. Matt Reynolds is a guy you probably are going to want in August and September to help you finish out the year. So, you may see someone that has an option, maybe even like a Max Schrock, get sent down if there's, too many guys healthy. Which I know that sounds weird to say, but if there's too many guys healthy at once, you might see a guy like Max Schrock sent down and people be upset about it. But it's just so, hey, we can have a somewhat competitive team at the end of the year. And I know that might sound silly if you're not competing, but I think for the Reds, with some of these young pitchers, you don't want all these young players to be playing around completely garbage lineup, really bad defense. I know Matt Reynolds had a bad defensive play today, but I think overall he's probably a pretty solid glove. Those things do matter some. How much? I don't know. There's no way of quantifying it, but I know the Reds do value that, and I think most teams do.
Well, coming up, this team is heading on a road trip to St. Louis. I have made no secret how I feel about the evil empire that is Cardinals country. So we're going to get into that in just a minute. The Reds really do need to work on being healthy and continuing to get healthy and strong. And if you want to get healthy and strong, head over to built.com right now and get yourself a Built Bar. Don't you love chewy chocolate brownies? What about caramel brownie with caramel swirled on top? So good. What if I told you that you can have all that chewy, chocolatey deliciousness plus 17 grams of protein? Well, you're in luck because caramel brownie bars are available at built.com. Right now, you got to act fast because they're a favorite and they're there for a limited time. You can forget about dessert because these are better than dessert. Plus, they are covered in 100% real chocolate. They're only 130 calories. They are jam-packed with 17 grams of protein. That's only 4 grams of sugar per bar. For those of you that are doing the keto diet, these are the treats for you. You can head over to built.com right now and use the promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your next order at built.com. Get yourself some cherries Barcia. Those are my favorite. Get yourself some puffs. Those are Jeff's favorite. I don't know which ones Kirby eats, but we're going to send him a sampler pack and we'll get him on board as well. Built.com. Use the promo code LOCKED15 to save 15% off your next order of Built Bar. Thank you for making Locked On Reds your first listen. We have an important favor to ask you. We've put together a survey so that we can learn more about listeners like you and make your favorite Locked On podcasts even better. This is your opportunity to tell us what you like and what you don't like about Locked On podcasts. Go to lockedonpodcasts.com/survey right now to get started. It won't take very long, and everyone that completes a survey can qualify for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Ticketmaster gift cards. To take our audience survey, go to lockedonpodcasts.com/survey. Thanks so much for your help. We really do appreciate it. Make sure you're following the podcast on all platforms, including YouTube. Coming up next week, we will break down the series that is going to occur over the weekend in St. Louis and get you caught up on all of the Reds roster moves. Speaking of that series in St. Louis, Nick, it's one of those things. I really hate the Cardinals. They drive me bonkers. Their fans drive me bonkers. Yadier Molina, oh my God, I just cannot with this farewell tour already. But this is probably a series the Reds are going to have some difficulties with. Just looking at it on paper as they head down there to St. Louis, what are your initial thoughts on how the Reds will fare against the Cardinals this time around?
Yeah, I know the Cardinals, I think they just got swept by the Rays, but before that, were playing really well. On paper, I do love the pitching matchups. I think the Reds are going to be facing an opener on Friday against Luis Castillo. So that's, that feels favorable. Now, again, what happens after Castillo leaves the game, that
Right.
might be a different story. And then Saturday, fun matchup, Hunter Green, Adam Wainwright. Reds, for some bizarre reason, own Adam Wainwright. Makes absolutely no sense to me. I'll never understand it. And then Sunday, Graham Ashcraft, Dakota Hudson. So, you kind of look at the series. These are probably the three guys. Maybe Tyler Mahle, but Mahle, I think, has struggled against the Cardinals. These are probably three guys you'd love to have in the series. So, I think it'll be a fun series. Hopefully, the Reds can go down, have a great series, sweep the Cardinals, and we're all feeling really good on Monday.
Oh, that's music to my ears. Sweep the Cardinals.
I think last year.
That's right.
Happened last year.
I think I agree with you as far as the rotation goes right now. This fell, I think, really well for the Reds. Luis Castillo just gets better every time out. I have enjoyed so much watching Hunter Green pitch and continue to develop and get better. And Graham Ashcraft has really been pretty amazing so far. Let's talk about Graham Ashcraft for just a minute. One of the things that I've been concerned about with him is, his major league debut and his arrival upon this Reds rotation, happened with a lot of uncertainty, and he just kind of got thrown into it. And I'm concerned, as there's more film on him, as major league hitters have more time to study him, they're going to catch up to what he's doing a little bit. Do you think he can continue to get ground balls at the rate he's been getting ground balls, and keeping hitters off balance as well as he has? Or is he going to have to start to make adjustments as well to continue to keep the hitters from catching up?
Yeah, I mean, I think he'll have to make adjustments. When you throw 100 miles an hour, though, that I guess I think that makes the adjustments maybe a little bit more favorable for you. Um, I know my co-host Carlos
You're
on
Carlos.
my
All
my
right.
Carlos, my co-host Carlos talked about how he thought Ashcraft needed to refine his third pitch a little bit better. So yeah, I mean, I think he'll have some growing pains, but man, the guy's just jumped into like you said, a difficult situation. He throws strikes, which is just so awesome for a rookie pitcher, and has all the confidence in the world. Um, I thought, from everything I had read and seen, and I'm no minor league expert by any means, I thought he probably profiled better as a reliever, but every time I see him start, I feel like that's dumber and dumber. So I don't know. I'm just excited to see what he's got. I love the collection of arms that the Reds seem to be getting. The great thing is whoever doesn't work as a starter can fix the bullpen. Kind of as these guys kind of go through the system. And I've said it before, but the big difference between the Reds and Brewers last year was the Brewers, just every time they had an injury, they just brought some dude up and he jumped in and he was
Mhm.
great. I hope the Reds are going to kind of follow that mold a little bit. It kind of seems like that's the direction they're going. So that's hopefully, I guess the goal.
I'd like to get your thoughts on Hunter Green while we've got you today as our special guest co-host. One of the things with Hunter that have identified as a real strong personality trait is he's not afraid to dig into each of his performances and be direct with the media, and be direct when he talks about when he identifies weaknesses and what he wants to do differently and what he wants to improve upon. And I find that to be very refreshing, because you don't always get that from pitchers. And I think that he's done a pretty effective job of making adjustments and improving start to start. But while you're here, I just kind of like to hear your thoughts on him as he's developed from the beginning of the season through now.
Yeah, just a guy that's 22 years old making these adjustments on the fly at the big league level is just it's so impressive. His poise is next level. It's unlike anything I don't know if I've ever seen before. I'll humble brag a little bit. At Fenway Park, their bullpen is awesome. You're like right there, so I was like I could reach out and almost touch him. I was that
Mhm.
close, and just I'm not a guy who gets into all the this guy has this great poise and all that, but you can just tell he is just so determined. It's hard to explain without actually seeing it and seeing it in person. And I know a lot of Jim Day's talked about that. I know Derek Johnson's talked about that. I don't think it's BS. I mean, I think it's legit. I mean, he has this just incredible poise. You saw it at Dodger Stadium when he made that big start. Uh, man, I'm so excited. He's gonna have his growing pains. He's gonna have his ups and downs. Probably not even just this year, but maybe next. But I'll say it. I can't. Maybe Johnny Cueto. What pitchers in our lifetime could be the best pitcher in baseball? Not many that have played for the Reds. Hunter Green could. He could be the best pitcher in all of baseball. And if you can't get
Right?
excited
In
about
our
that, I don't.
lifetime, yeah, in our lifetime, there was a time that, well, in my lifetime, maybe not yours, but in my lifetime, there was some conversation around Jose Rio before he got
Mhm.
injured as being that guy. Then Johnny Cueto, like you say, and now maybe Hunter Green.
Yeah.
Before we get out of here, what do the Reds have to do to accomplish that sweep that you promised our listeners down in St. Louis? Who do they have to shut down? Who's the one guy in this St. Louis lineup that needs to be neutralized in order for the Reds to have the ability to walk away with at least a series victory, maybe not a sweep?
Uh, probably I don't know, probably Nolan Arenado. I think he's had the best year for them. I mean, they have a pretty good lineup up and down. So I mean, just, it's a lineup that you're going to have to really be focused. They don't, they don't have an elite lineup. It's just a very long lineup, and there's not a lot of easy outs in their lineup. So, especially with, with the DH. So yeah, I mean, it's please go as long as you can, starters, and um Alex Diaz threw 2 innings today. So, hopefully some guys can step up and, give some big innings of relief.
Well, he is Nick Kirby. You can follow him on Twitter at Nicholas Kirby. You can follow me at S Offenbaker, and you can follow the show at Locked On Reds. Nick, before you go, why don't you pitch your show a little bit for some of our listeners that maybe have not had the chance to discover it yet?
Yeah. No, thanks so much for having me, Steve. And thanks to Jeff as well. Yeah. Late Night Reds Talk live every Wednesday night at 9 o'clock or after a Reds game if there's a late Reds game. So every Wednesday night we're on. We try to have fun. We do the show live on YouTube. So you can jump on and ask questions and interact with us. That's kind of, what we feel it makes the show kind of fun. And then post it up as a podcast every early Thursday morning.
All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On Reds. Coming up next week, we will break down the St. Louis series. And again, we will get you caught up on all of the Reds' pending roster moves. Thanks so much for making Locked On Reds your first listen. Now make Locked On MLB your second listen. Sully brings you his unique perspective on the major leagues, both past and present. Locked On MLB, just like Locked On Reds, is free and available on all platforms. The season continues to grind on, and the Reds continue to make moves and fight injuries. But if you want to stay up to date, we will keep you with all of the Reds knowledge that we can pass along right here on Locked On Reds every single day. We will see you next week.